well, that's a little difficult for some, perhaps. But
let's talk about the ideal, obviously, is to do all of the above, to moderate your diet, exercise, and smoking. But if you've got a lot of bad habits and you can only perhaps modify one or two of them, which order do you feel we should modify them in?
Well, in my opinion, I'd start with the smoking, stop smoking. I'd take up exercising, and as I said, a good brisk walk is a good place to start. The diet is a little more difficult for subs. One may have to change the entire diet of a family, but that can be done.
Let's move on to the third question, because I think this ties into the whole question of a modifiable risk. We're going to introduce the concept of pressure and a high-pressure lifestyle. Here's question 3 in the ATV Heart Quiz. The risk of heart attack for a person with a highly pressurized lifestyle is, and here come the answers, no greater than for anyone else, which was said by 10% of our participants. It is doubled, according to 42% of the Heart Quiz participants, tripled according to fully 25% of the 16,000 people who took the test, and 5 times greater according to 23%. And Dr. Clausen, I guess the good news in this is that clearly people realize there is a risk, but in fact it is only doubled.
Yeah, I think that people are focusing on the fact that stress is indeed a very important factor in the genesis of heart disease. And they realize that that's something that has to be controlled. One of the worst factors in terms of stress is the economic one. We see more and more heart disease in Nova Scotia in the population areas which are not economically advantaged. Mm-hmm. And that's very important, because that's something we can do something about. So
I guess the point that we need to make here is that clearly there is an element of risk, if you will, if you're having a high-pressure lifestyle, but that the risk may not be quite as great as we've been led to believe. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's true, and certainly we don't want to quit doing things which are productive. Mm-hmm. We don't want to just be laid-back potatoes. We want to do more than that.
Indeed. Let's move on now to the fourth question on the ATV Heart Quiz. People over the age of 55 have a decreased risk of heart disease. And here is what maritimers said. 9% said the statement was true, but an overwhelming 91% said the statement was false. And I guess once again we have a good indication that maritimers are aware that age is a risk factor.
It's a risk factor. You can't do much about it, but it's a fact. But there are things that can be done in terms of modifying the other risk factors other than age, which is going to allow you to reach a higher age before that event occurs.
Interesting to note, too, that age is one of the only factors over which, one of the few factors over which we really do have no control. We're all getting older even as we sit here.
It's inevitable.
Unfortunately. All right, the next question on the ATV Heart Quiz is this. All of the following may cause symptoms of a heart attack except, number 1, nausea, vomiting, and or indigestion, cited by 36% of our participants. Pressure or pain in the chest, cited by 6% of those who took the Heart Quiz. Shortness of breath, the choice of 9% of our participants. And one-sided body weakness, the choice of 49% of those who took the quiz. Now, Dr. Clausen, there is an interesting observation out of this, it seems to me, and that is clearly that the majority, the largest number of our Heart Quiz participants recognized one-sided body weakness is not, in fact, a symptom of heart disease.
Exactly.
But a large number of our participants did not realize that vomiting could be, and sickness.
Now, that's an important point, because the fact is that if the heart attack happens to occur in the bottom part of the heart, as far as the brain is concerned in our perception, it's just as though something has happened in our stomach. We feel indigestion. We feel sweating. And those can be signs of heart attack in the same way that the pain in the chest can be. So that if something unusual occurs, it's a kind of indigestion that doesn't go away with the usual measures, that's the time to go off to the emergency ward to be sure something isn't going on.
The one other observation that could be made here, gentlemen, is that 51% of those who took the quiz were not aware that one-sided body weakness is not a symptom.
Exactly.
I guess the confusion here is that it is a symptom of stroke.
That's right.
But not of heart attack.
Not of heart attack.
All right, let's move on to the next question here on the ATV Heart Quiz, and it is simply this. Identify which of the following is not a major factor for heart disease. And the answers, or the options, were high blood pressure at 1% of our participants, high cholesterol at 1%, exercise at 96%, and then smoking at 1%. And Dr. Breckenridge, I guess the good news here is you can go out and exercise to your heart's content, because it is clearly not a major factor for heart disease, and maritimers know it.
No, exercise is very good for you. It increases heart function. It improves circulation of blood through the body. It reduces the tendency for blood to clot, and it even improves some of the carriers of cholesterol in the bloodstream. whereas the other three are serious factors that virtually double the risk with each one, and they're all additive, so that if you have those three other factors that are listed, you have a six-fold increased risk.
A six-fold increase?
Compared to normal, yes, if you have all three. So it's if you have all of those in a genetic tendency in your family to have premature heart disease, then you should really concentrate on those.
Would you go so far as to say there's no such thing as too much exercise when it comes to cardiovascular health?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far.
All things in moderation. All right. That brings us around to the seventh question, and this is an important one. The symptoms of a heart attack may, and the options were, be mild and ignored, chosen by 4%. Come and go, chosen by 3%. May be attributed to some other cause, chosen by 4%. And include all of the above, which was chosen by 89%. And clearly, Dr. Clausen, that again indicates a high level of knowledge on this particular question.
It does indeed, and I think it's very important that people have that knowledge, because when it comes to treating a heart attack, the critical period of time is that first 3 or 4 hours. The sooner you can get into the hospital, the more that can be done for you. So it's very important when those symptoms occur that they not be ignored and the patient proceed to the hospital with dispatch, stopping for nothing.
And I think that sets up very nicely our eighth question, and the final question in this first segment dealing with the ATV Heart Quiz. It is this: when symptoms of a heart attack are present, the main objective should be, and here come the options, get the victim to the nearest hospital, chosen by 82% of our participants. Have the victim sit or lie down was chosen by 8% of those who took the test. No one suggested, or 0%, statistically no one, suggested monitoring symptoms for an hour to see whether they go away. But 10% of the people who took part in the heart quiz did suggest calling a doctor to the scene, and clearly that would not be the best option. Getting to the hospital has to be number one.
It's number one, because the fact is, to treat a heart attack, you need the modern technology of a hospital. And that's the place for a person to be when a heart attack occurs. There's no other place to be.
And once again, perhaps we could reemphasize how much happens in the first initial minutes or hours after a heart attack takes place.
The mortality is the immediate one. That's when 30% of the deaths occur, is in that first 30 to 40 minutes. So that's the period of time you want to be in a hospital where you can get the proper care and your life can be saved.
All right, well, there you have our first 8 answers on the ATV Heart Quiz, and we have another 8 questions to answer a bit later in the program. In the meantime, gentlemen, it seems we're doing fairly well, and we'll find out just how much better we are going to be able to do in the second half hour of the program. Also coming up here on Live at 5, of course, the draw to see who among our Heart Quiz participants is going to win a trip for 2 in Europe, and that's coming up later on cholesterol. Here's question number 9 in the ATV Heart Quiz. High blood cholesterol over time can cause atherosclerosis, a disease commonly known as enlarged heart, cited by 3% of our participants, heart murmur, 1%, hardening of the arteries, 95%, and gout, 1%. And Dr. Breckenridge, once again, maritimers have displayed their knowledge of this particular subject, because it is indeed hardening of the arteries. But is it literally hardening of the arteries?
Yes, when you have high cholesterol values in the bloodstream, there's a tendency for the cholesterol to deposit in the artery wall. And as this goes on, a plaque forms which hardens the wall. It narrows the lumen, or the center of the capillary or the artery, and eventually the wall becomes harder. So it literally is hardening of the artery.
Isn't that amazing? Literally, the artery becomes a hard
it loses its elasticity, and the surface becomes just like calcium or a rock in some small areas of the plaque. Yes.
It's hard indeed. Once again, something to be avoided. Bringing us around to the next question. As an adult, I should be concerned about my diet if my blood cholesterol is above 200 milligrams per 100 milliliters. That's pretty scientific stuff, but it didn't prevent maritimers from getting the correct answer, which is true. It is true that if your number, your magic number, is above 200, that you should be getting concerned. But let's talk about what exactly the magic number is.
Yes, this is a major change from earlier thinking. In previous years, or until recently, it was thought that we shouldn't be concerned about cholesterol until it was much higher, perhaps in the order of 270 milligrams per 100 ml. However, several studies now have shown that lowering cholesterol really does reduce the incidence of heart attacks. And since the risk starts to increase above 200, many experts are now recommending that we start to try to lower or convince people to lower their cholesterol once it's above 200. I should add that there are two methods for reporting cholesterol. The one that's shown here is on the basis of weight and is used in some countries. In Canada, most of the laboratories are switching to a different method for reporting, which is based on the molecules of cholesterol in a volume of serum. And for those who may be interested, 200 milligrams per 100 ml is, in the new terminology, is 5.2. Okay. So that may be for anyone that's interested in that.
But of course, and it may be to state the obvious to observe that you can't do something about your number till you know what it is. And that is why I think the medical profession is encouraging patients to know your number, have a test.
Yes, very much so.
So you should ask your doctor for it? You should ask if you have any doubts or concerns?
I think you can, and in particular, for individuals who have a history in their family of premature coronary heart disease, I think it's really important that they have their number checked.
Well, again, with cholesterol, it is certain that you are what you eat, and that brings us around to the next question on the ATV Heart Quiz. To lower your blood cholesterol, it is important to make the right food choices when planning your diet. Given these choices, which foods would you choose? And here come the choices. And once again, bear in mind that this has been answered by a large number of people here in the Maritime Provinces. Safflower oil versus lard. Clearly, Dr. Breckenridge, the choice here is safflower oil.
Yes.
All right. Red meat or fish?
Fish is the choice.
Today's dish.
Yes.
To plug another product. So. And given the choice of whole milk versus skim milk, clearly the choice is the skim milk variety. And once again, looking at these numbers, it clearly suggests that maritimers are aware of the proper choices for their diets. But is that to say that everyone is making these proper choices? Can we speculate on that?
Yes, I think that's a major question. People are aware that they should be lowering the amount of saturated fat and cholesterol which is found in meats, red meats, organ meats, and in dairy products. The big question is whether they're actually doing that in their everyday life. Are they giving up the cream in the coffee? Are they cutting the extra fat off the edge of the steak? Are they taking the poultry, the skin off poultry, so on? Now there are some really good initiatives to help people out in that sense. The Heart Foundation has recently brought out or sponsored a cookbook which really demonstrates to people how they can do this and still have a fairly tasty meal.
All of which is to say that we're concerned here with matters of the quality of the food rather than quantity, and it leads nicely into question 12 in the ATV Heart Quiz. The main cause of high cholesterol is overeating. I think this is a bit of a knee-jerk question. The first response might be to say, yeah, if you eat too much, chances are you're going to ruin your cholesterol level. But in point of fact, this is a false statement. The quality of the food is much more important than the quantity, Doctor.
Yes, and there are a couple of factors that play a role in this. It depends on the type of food that you're eating, and it also depends on the amount of food that you require for your dietary or your expenditure of energy. And so depending on how much exercise you get, this will determine how many calories you require. So clearly this is a major factor in the type of food that you should consume.
And it's clearly not enough just to skip a meal and hope that you're skipping all the bad stuff. You may in fact be skipping some of the good stuff too and not doing yourself a bit of good. All right, this brings us around to another series of questions, the final four, and we begin with this, under the category of stress, high blood pressure, and exercise. Which of the following activities will best help reduce your risk of heart disease? Here are the choices: raking the leaves, walking the dog, playing golf, downhill skiing, or all of the above. And Dr. Clausen, a large number of people opted to take Fido for a walk, which is, of course, not a bad way to exercise your heart, but in fact, any of those activities is good for your cardiovascular system.
They're all good. The major thing you want to do is have something you enjoy so that you're going to do it. You want to be able to get your heart rate up so that it's enough of a stress to the cardiovascular system that you develop fitness. And I think Nova Scotians recognize that, or Maritimers recognize that, and so that's what they're telling us in a response to that particular question. You've got to exercise, you want to get your heart rate up, do something you enjoy doing so you'll keep doing it all the time.
And again, some exercise is better than none, is the message.
Absolutely, no question about that.
That leads us to this. The only way to know if you have high blood pressure is to have it measured. And once again, Maritimers have demonstrated a good deal of expertise in this area because that is
true. The people know. And the problem with high blood pressure is you don't have any symptoms. If it can be very elevated, it can be dangerously elevated, and you don't know. The only way you know is you go to the doctor, he measures the blood pressure, tells you what the number is, and you remember it. And if it's up, you do something about it, it has to come down.
So there's two things to ask for, not only your high blood pressure test or your blood pressure check, but also your cholesterol number, two tests to look for. That brings us to number 15 on the ATV Heart Quiz. Here's the question. Moderate exercise, and underline moderate exercise, decreases your risk of heart disease by, and here are the options. Raising your blood pressure, certainly not. Statistically, no one gave us that answer here in the Maritimes. Enlarging your heart, once again, statistically, no one chose that option. Number 3 was a favorite, however, improving circulation throughout the body. And then none of the above, and actually the X has jumped down to none of the above. In point of fact, the X should be dancing beside improving circulation throughout your body. We should improve the circulation in the X, perhaps. But once again, moderate exercise is the key here.
It's the key. You've got to stress the cardiovascular system, and that's the key that allows you to reduce the risk of coronary disease.
And once again, I think I'm emphasizing moderate exercise because, in point of fact, some people may believe that in the interest of getting a good heart workout that you have to go out and do 2 hours of aerobics. Nothing wrong with that, but moderate exercise will also accomplish a great deal.
The moderate exercise is good. The thing is that by doing that moderate exercise, you're not going to be damaging the articular cartilages, the rest of your system, so that you end up with arthritis. We want people to be healthy.
All right, final question on the ATV Heart Quiz. Fit people do not have heart attacks. True or false? And once again, Maritimers are very well aware that heart disease is indeed not very discriminating. It can, in fact, strike literally anyone, including the very physically fit.
That's the problem. If all of the things that we told people, and they did them all, they're still going to get heart disease. That's why we need research. And the Heart Foundation is devoted to research. It's devoted to finding out so that we can then take the information that we get from that research, bring it back here, tell the people, and reduce that risk even more.
I guess the one question that every pupil asks after taking a test is, doctors, did we pass? How do you think Maritimers did on the ATV Heart Quiz, given the answers you've had time to look at?
Fantastically.
I would agree. They did very well.
Passing grade for all. Healthy hearts all the way around. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. Dr. Carl Breckenridge and Dr. Jerry Clausen, experts in the field, reviewing the results of the ATV Heart Quiz. And of course, we are going to make the draw for the trip for two to Amsterdam. And if you took part in the quiz, you're eligible later this half hour. But first, Paul Mennier has the ATV Sports when Live at 5 continues.
Evening, everybody. Round 10 at the Labatt Brier is underway in Saskatoon. Ontario and BC entered leading with 5-1 records. We have updates for you. Ontario and Quebec tied at 5 after 6 ends. BC ahead of the Territories 4-3. They're playing in the 7th now. A couple of maritime teams bowed out early today. Newfoundland defeated PEI 9-1. They called it quits after 4 ends there. And Saskatchewan over Gary Mitchell's New Brunswick team 7-1. They called it quits in the 8th. One other scored a report. Manitoba ahead of Alberta 3-1. They are playing in the 8th end now. Northern Ontario and Nova Scotia had byes through the 10th. Well, first place is on the line in Halifax tonight as the Citadels host the Sherbrooke Canadians in the battle for the AHL's Northern Division. The Canadians lead that division by a point after beating the Moncton Hawks last night. We're at the Moncton Coliseum. Some excellent goaltending last night at both ends. Number 11 for Moncton, Guy LaRose, will break in all alone on Jean-Claude Bergeron. Bergeron makes the save with the stick. There would be no scoring in the first period. Habs would get on the board in the second. From the boards, Stéphane Richer to Sylvain Lefebvre. He blasts it, and Sherbrooke had a 1-0 lead. 36 seconds into the third period. Sherbrooke Canadians are shorthanded. Some excellent work here by number 27, Stéphane Lebeau, along the blue line. The puck is left for Benoit Brunet, who comes into the slot, beats Tom Draper glove side, and that made it 2-0. And then, just 16 seconds later, the Hawks come to within 1. As it's number 4, Chris Norton, who carries in, shoots, tipped right there by Guy LaRose. That's as close as the Hawks would come. However, the fans did get their money's worth in the third period. Tremendous end-to-end action throughout here. Jocelyn Lemieux with a chance. The save by Draper. Martin Nicoletti gets a chance on the other side of the net, but the puck will go the other way. It's carried by Alfie Turcotte, the length of the ice. A nice move, perfect shot, robbed by the glove of Jean-Claude Bergeron. The Sherbrooke Canadians take over first in the north with a 3-1 win over the Moncton Hawks. They play in Halifax tonight, expecting about 8,000 fans at Metro Centre. Roll of highlights at 12:30. NHL tonight, the Montreal Canadiens can leapfrog over the Calgary Flames back into first place by beating the Washington Capitals in Landover. The Flames, with 2 goals from Lanny McDonald, beat the Jets last night. And in Inglewood, it was Lemieux versus Gretzky. First period of the game, Wayne Gretzky will set up Bernie Nichols for his 59th of the season. That was on the power play. Penguins would take a 2-1 lead in the first in the efforts of Lemieux. First, he set up Jock Collender for his 5th of the season. And then, with the Penguins shorthanded, the Kings' Igor Liba pulls Lemieux down on a breakaway. That, of course, means penalty shot. Gulp, gulp, says the goalie. And in this case, it's Kelly Rudy. Look at the moves Lemieux has for him. Robitaille tied it at 2 with his 42nd in the second. No scoring in the third. In overtime, it's Gretzky to Steve Casper. Dave Taylor gets the power play game winner. LA outshot him 30-25. It will be Dartmouth and Truro in the Nova Scotia Senior Hockey Final. Those teams beat their respective opponents last night. The New Brunswick League sees a battle between Fredericton and St. John. The second series in the Metro Valley semifinals begins in Moncton tonight. The Hawks hosts the Dartmouth Eagles. Last night, the Halifax Lions won Game 1 of their best-of-7 series with the Antigonish Bulldogs. 5-4 the final in that one. That's it for Live at 5 Sports. We've got more of the program right after these messages.
And just before we make our ATV Heart Quiz draw, meteorologist Richard Zurawski is finished with his workout, and he's here now with the weather recap. Richard?
Steve, is it bad news if you get winded turning that drum over?
I don't know. We have a cardiologist here, though. Don't worry.
Well, I think we're surviving. We're going to survive this area of high pressure, too. It's moving in. Well, it's been here for the last couple of days. That's why we've had the extremely cold temperatures. Well, it's going to stick around. And that means some clear skies tonight. We're talking double-digit frigid up to the north. Down to the south, minus 13 to minus 17 degrees. Again, we'd like to remind you, bring the pets, plants, whatever. It's cold out there. Bring them inside. Get the fireplace ready because the temperatures are dipping down minus 17 to minus 22 degrees in through the central areas of the Maritimes. For tomorrow, the sunshine comes out. We can turn down the thermostat just a bit. Temperatures minus 2 to minus 6 degrees. Great day coming up. Enjoy it. And back to Steve.
All right, Richard, thank you. We're joined now here in the newsroom by Sharon Davis, who is with the accounting firm of Thorne, Ernst & Whinney. And I guess the duty falls to you to make the draw to determine which of these 16,000 ballots is the lucky one that wins the trip to Amsterdam. And I tried to give that a spin around a moment ago with Richard. Maybe we'll give it one more,
okay, we'll give
one
it a
more
try.
spin around, and then we'll make the draw. And we must tell you, folks at home, that we were very, very surprised, and pleased, with the response to the Heart Quiz. We received almost 16,000 individual Heart Quiz forms, and I know that our sponsors, and particularly the Maritime Heart Foundations, are very pleased with that sort of result, and so are we, and we thank you very much for taking time to take part. And now I'm going to have you dig in, weigh in,
okay,
and
I'll wish
pull
everybody
one out.
good luck
and
first.
Here we go. If we had a drum, we'd roll it. And here we go. Okay. And we'll have you announce the winner as well.
Okay, I'll dig way in the bottom here.
And once again, if you have entered the Heart Quiz, you're eligible.
I got 2 there.
Oh, we had 2.
Okay.
And who's our winner?
Peter A. Vanderveer.
Peter A. Vanderveer of Winchester Avenue in Moncton. You are the winner of our trip for 2 to Amsterdam, Holland. And let's take a look at the prize package, and we will be in touch with you to confirm all of the information. But here is what you have won, Peter A. Vanderveer. You won a trip for 2 from Halifax to Amsterdam, Holland on board Canadian Airlines International. This has been put together by our friends at Fraser and Hoyt Travel, and your prize package includes 7 nights hotel accommodation in Amsterdam. So Peter A. Vanderveer of Winchester Avenue in Moncton, you are our lucky winner in the ATV Heart Quiz draw, and we will be in touch with you to confirm your prize package and how you can go about making the arrangements for your vacation in Europe. And once again, at this point, on behalf of the many blue ribbon corporate sponsors who joined ATV News in this project, Merck Frost Canada Limited, Shoppers Drug Mart across the 3 maritime provinces, Canadian Airlines International, Fraser and Hoyt Travel, and of course, the Heart Foundation of Nova Scotia, the Heart Foundation of New Brunswick, and the Heart Foundation of Prince Edward Island, and of course all of us here at the Atlantic Television System, we thank you for taking part